We're talking today with musical theater writers Alan Zachary and Michael Weiner, and it would be easy to say that they are a team that has worked for Disney and has had shows on Broadway and is getting lots and lots of commissions. But I happen to know that there's a long story about how you guys got there and the amount of time and the amount of work you put in order to find yourselves in the position you're in today. And I have loved hearing the story before, so I'd love to prompt you to just talk about how did you get together as a team, and what were those early days like while you were slogging away trying to get to where you are today?
Well, it starts with so many stories often do. In high school, where two of us went to school in North Hollywood together, and we were both in musicals together, starring in musicals. We were drama jocks, and we just, both of us discovered that we both had a passion for musical theater and for Disney animated movies and for classic movie musicals, Broadway musicals.
And we were 17 years old in high school, and we were influenced by all the Disney animated movies, as Alan said, Broadway shows. So we're 17, and we decided, why not? Let's write an animated movie musical and submit it to every single studio in Hollywood, which we did with letters saying, we're 17, please meet with us. We wrote a script, wrote six songs that we recorded in my parents' living room, very primitively.
Had no idea what we were doing.
No idea what we were doing. And we said, we're 17, please meet with us. And we thought, you got to try. And actually, almost every place met with us.
Yeah.
And we ended up selling our first song when we were 18, a year later to Hanna-Barbera for a Pebbles and Bam Bam Christmas special, Flintstones Christmas special. So it kind of just goes to show that, you just got to put yourself out there and beg people to listen,
without being too annoying.
Although we were 17, so it was sort of harmless.
Do you think
that was a big selling point.
That was a selling point.
Do you think
at least
the
they
same
could just
thing?
encourage us.
Guys, do you think the same thing would have worked if you'd sent those letters saying, we're 35 years old, and I mean, it really was tied into the fact
the funny thing is we still do that now, even with having a Broadway show or a lot of work for Disney or, musical episodes of shows on TV, like we did the Once Upon a Time musical episode. That happened once upon a time, the musical episode for ABC, because we were literally looking for opportunities to write songs for television. And we said, what shows could have a musical episode that haven't had them? We were just generating the idea for ourselves. No one asked us. ABC certainly wasn't on their radar to do that. And we called our agent. We said we thought Once Upon a Time being fairy tales, being Disney, would be a natural for a musical episode. Would they be interested in doing it? And our agents got us a meeting with the head of music at ABC, and we pitched her a couple ideas of how it could be done. She was convinced, and then she had us meet with the showrunners, and we had to convince them.
So in many ways, it's weird. It's the same as when we were teenagers. You're always proving yourself, no matter where it is, no matter what you're doing. You think it's people should just be calling now. And the truth is, someone will be like, oh, you have a show on Broadway. Oh, they write that Broadway stuff, but they don't do TV. Or they write comedies, but they don't write dramas.
Or my agent's going to get me a job. And this is, and we have great agents, but this was an example of we were looking for opportunities and just making them up. Yeah. We were saying, well, maybe there's a musical TV episode of a show that would be interested in doing that, and we pitched it. So I think it's always about self-generating your ideas and then being brave enough, and again, like we said, not annoying, but brave enough to try to contact and get in touch with people that could actually make it happen.
Fantastic. So back when you were 17 and you sent out those letters and you got some meetings, when you did start getting gigs together, what kinds of things were you doing at that point?
Some stuff. We were both pretty much 100% in LA at that time, because obviously we were kids. But most of it was actually first pursuing animation, because we thought, with all the Disney animated musicals, it just felt like that was a place to be doing musical theater in Los Angeles and be making a living doing it. So we actually ended up doing several animated projects. Some things that we ended up doing for Disney, for some direct-to-video stuff, some stuff that we did for some other animation companies. Just places where we could apply. We were looking for any place where we could apply the same skill set that you would use for writing songs for Broadway musical, but where we could do it, just on a case-for-case basis. So Disney animation or any kind of animated musical project was a great place to be doing that.
We still, and that's our philosophy even now. We live in New York, but we come to LA every couple of weeks. Obviously, we do a lot of work in LA too. But being musical theater writers, being in New York has been useful and helpful in terms of getting to know the community of producers out here and make those relationships, like we spent time in LA making the relationships with TV executives or Disney executives and all of those things. So it's useful to go back and forth, actually. And one thing that we did early on and that we still do today is that we said we really want to work and have our day job being songwriters? How can we do this? That doesn't mean we knew we weren't going to make a living just writing musicals. Because you write a musical, and
it could happen anywhere from 3 years to 15 years from now to never.
To never.
Is when your musical could be produced, and you're not really making money in terms of like living off of all of it until your show is up and running and there are thousands and thousands of people going to see it.
Right.
So we were like, how can we still be songwriters and hone our skills and become better musical theater writers by what are the other opportunities where we can make money? And that's why we discovered, obviously animation was a key place, but it was also like cruise ships.
Yeah.
They do original musicals on a Disney Cruise Line, which we've written a couple. It's an incredible experience doing that because you get to not only write a 1 hour original show, which teaches you the lessons in economy of writing and all of those things, but you get to record with big orchestras. You recorded with an orchestra at Abbey Road. You work with great theater directors that they bring in. So we were like looking at cruise ships. We were looking at commercials.
We also growing up in LA, we were so passionate about going to Disneyland because, of course, that was one of our favorite memories. Was going to Disneyland as kids.
Theme parks.
And theme parks are a place where it's actually a lot of people's first introduction to any kind of theater or musical theater of some kind where songs are being used to tell a story. So one of the things we did many years ago was we told our agent, she's like, what would you guys like to be doing? We said, we'd love to write the next Yo Ho Yo Ho Irish Life for Me. Like, how can we write songs that people would be exposed to all the time? It's kind of like a gateway to theatrical storytelling, which led to a lot of different things of writing songs for all different kinds of theatrical projects.
Wow, so you guys were really, really proactive. But then when did you start to get your first opportunities to actually work on a theatrical piece that was meant for a stage in a theater?
The first ones we did, we again created ourselves. Like they were shows that we self-generated. One of them got into a festival in New York called NAMM, National Amateur Musical Theater Festival. And that show, which was a family musical that we wrote, never produced, but got into the festival and then ended up being workshopped at a variety of theaters. NAMM became an introduction to us to a lot of regional theaters, New York producers. We got a theater agent out of it. So it was very helpful in getting into the actual theater community just by submitting the show blindly, and we got in.
Which, by the way, was actually evidence of the idea that it's not necessarily even the project that you're working on. Like, you may think, this is my ticket, this is going to be produced, this will be on Broadway, but very often the thing you're working on is just going to be a path that you don't know about, that's going to lead you to meeting the right people. So when you do have the right show, or maybe they love something you've done, and then you get hired for that other project.
And then, for example, we demoed a song, or a couple songs for a potential Broadway musical, that a producer who saw our show at NAMM liked our work, said, hey, I'm producing this show, would you guys want to demo? We jumped at the opportunity. We came very close, we didn't get it, but we did really slick orchestrated demos that sounded like fully produced, because our agent said you have to compete in that way. And because of those demos, it attracted a producer, a studio executive at Warner Brothers, who heard it, really liked it, said, hey, we have a property we're developing, a stage musical called Secondhand Lions, based on our movie with Michael Caine and Robert Duvall. Would you guys want to demo for that? We demoed for it, we got it, and we were the songwriters, and we got teamed up with Rupert Holmes, who wrote the book, which is an incredible opportunity to work with Rupert. And then the show was produced at the Fifth Avenue Theater in Seattle and going to other places now. And it was an example of, like, we demoed for one show, we didn't get it, but that demo found its way into another producer's hands. They asked us to demo for something else, we got that. It was just,
Right.
It's sort of the art philosophy is always like, things come to you, say yes, and then, because it's not about that particular opportunity, it's about the people that you'll meet or the people that will hear what you do and everything down the road that you can't foresee at that particular moment.
As long as there's somebody legitimate involved, whether it be the producer or a director or an actor in it or someone like that, because if it's just a random person off the street, it can be a little delicate. But as long as there's some path, it's something.
Although you never know who that random person on the street is, so as long as you're getting your work out there.
That's true too. Listen, we've done certain things just because we were like, this seems interesting, let's just do it, and it led down just fascinating paths.
Yeah, we were just talking to Kellen Blair, who was one of the writers on Murder for Two, and who came through our program a number of years ago, and he was saying that when they had their world premiere at Chicago Shakespeare Festival, it was the mother of the lighting designer. The lighting designer told his mother, "You really have to come and see this," and she wound up being the Broadway producer on the show. Just so happened that the lighting designer's mother was
mothers are hugely important. Without our mothers, why would we ever have done this?
It's also good. It's also a good lesson. It's also a good lesson in this business, which we, is totally true. Is you should be nice anyway, but be nice to everybody.
Yeah.
The light, every single person on your team is so important, from the lighting designer to the ensemble to the swing, to every single person is a vital part of the whole picture.
Right.
And that's a great example of that too.
And they might be a lighting designer today, but they might be moving on to being an artistic director tomorrow. You don't know where they're headed. So as what you're talking about now, it seems to me, is that it's really, as you say, it's not always so much about the work as it is about the relationships. And if you can develop relationships with people, they're going to want to work with you, and then they're going to be looking for ways to make that happen. Would you say that?
That's happened to us
Countless times.
so many times.
Yeah.
That you meet somebody about a particular project, that project goes nowhere, and then a year later you get a phone call, it's like, "Hey, I'm working on this other thing. Would you guys be interested?" And that's amazing. And it really is like any business, but it's a people business, and you want to like the people you work with, and you do it because you're collaborating. I mean, you don't get into writing musicals to be a solo act. If you want to do that, go write a novel. You're writing. If you're working on musicals, you're going to be collaborative with people. So find great people to work with, and they'll work on a million different things, and that's the fun of it.
As an example, actually, we worked on a project 10 years ago that was for a theme park near Nagasaki. And it was fun. We did it because it was like cool. They were cool people. It was an interesting kind of world. And then 10 years later, we got a call that was like, those same people were working on a Harry Potter project for Universal. And they were like, "Would you guys be interested in writing songs for Harry Potter?"
That sounds neat. And then and just so you know, J.K. Rowling came up with the song titles and even had some lyrics, and she's going to work on the song. She's going to hear the song. You guys are going to so the next thing we know, we kind of like collaborated with J.K. Rowling on songs 10 years after, because they were the same.
Because we worked on Nagasaki stuff. So you just never know.
Wow, that's absolutely amazing. Can you talk a little bit about how First Date came about, where the idea came from, why you got started on it, and the pathway that it took?
Yeah. I mean, First Date was an example of writing something while you were waiting for what you thought was going to be the big Broadway show to get produced. We had written secondhand lines for Warner Brothers. That was on its path, and we were waiting for that. We had some other shows in the works with big producers, what we felt were big scale, big Broadway shows. And then you're realizing, oh, it takes a lot and a long time to get those things produced. So the two of us and one of our close friends, Austin Winsberg, who's a great TV writer out in LA, had been sitting around in LA kind of complaining about our careers, being like, "God, these shows are taking so long." And he's working in TV, and he's like, "I sell pilots and they don't get made." And then we're like, "Why don't we just write a fun little musical together with that has 7 people in it or something? We'll produce it ourselves at the Hudson Theater or someplace like that on Santa Monica Boulevard, and we'll just put it up. And how much does it really cost to do that? And we'll have written something and produce it ourselves, and that would be amazing."
And then at the same time, those same lunches, when we were complaining about our professional lives, we were complaining a little bit about our love lives too. And it's like, wait a second, why don't we combine these things together? We can talk about our love lives, we can talk about our professional lives, and actually create a show out of that.
And we just thought the notion of a musical about a first date, where you were literally on the first date with these two people, and the big dramatic thing that's happening is they're getting to know each other, all the baggage from their life is coming to life on stage. Felt fun and theatrical, and easily producible for us that we could do ourselves.
And our plan was really to just produce it ourselves. And we figured, hey, hopefully some people would be interested. Maybe it could tour. Maybe we could just license the show. Just to be.
I don't even know if we even thought that far ahead. And we literally thought, we'll just put it up ourselves somewhere. And then we decided we had a version of the show, and we were like, you know what? Why don't we do a reading of it? And then we looked at how much a reading would cost, and who we would do it for in LA or do it for in New York. And we're like, well, we should do the reading in New York because we know some Broadway producers.
We could get some good feedback.
They could tell us whether
if there's any next developmental step, if there's some theater, is there someone who would even throw a little bit of money our way?
Could have landed not for profit in New York or whatever. We thought, well, if we're going to do a show, we should go present it in New York.
Yeah.
And so we did a reading in New York that we produced ourselves, and we paid for it ourselves. We got a rehearsal studio, got the actors together, and we invited 40 people. And out of that, we had 3 different offers from Broadway producers who all wanted to take it on. And we were like, oh my God, man. So
it was great. And by the way, it wasn't to even necessarily take it on as a Broadway show. It was just to get it produced somewhere, to move on to a next developmental step.
And what our producers did was a company named Junkyard Dog. They're great producers who produce Memphis and come from away now. And they basically, they loved the show, and they said, hey, what would you guys think about doing it? Fifth Avenue Theater in Seattle has a small space act, a theater down the road from them that they do co-productions with. And they have this 500-seat theater, perfect for the show. And sent them the show. They wanted to do it, and we were like, this is great. And next thing we knew, we were doing a workshop up in Seattle. Then they did the production, and the production went so well. It got great reviews. The audiences loved it. That, and then there were other people interested, and they decided to move it to Broadway, which was an incredible opportunity for us to have a show on Broadway. And then because of that, it was licensed by the Rodgers & Hammerstein organization, and we've now had, I think, over 80 or 85 productions all around the world.
Including, I think, 10 or 15 in foreign languages. I think
Wow.
there's two different forms of Spanish that have been translated.
Yeah. So now it has its life all over the world. It's getting produced all the time, and it's amazing, and it exists and it's out there, and that's kind of how it happens.
That's amazing. So, you know, you run the gamut then from writing an original show with just 7 people in it that you produced yourselves versus, you know, being approached by a major studio to adapt a movie title. Those are, you know, sort of the two ends of the spectrum of how you can approach writing musicals. When you look at projects like that, do you approach them differently, or do you just feel like you're ready to do? You know, it's a theme park, it's Broadway, it's a small show. How do you approach them?
Yeah. I think honestly we approach them exactly the same. Yeah, we really do.
It's cracking the story, cracking conceptually, musically, how the music is going to function.
We love writing, and we love writing musicals, and we don't care if it's at a cruise ship or in a theme park or on Broadway or, you know, in a regional theater somewhere. It's just fun working on the process, and it's fun putting something out. So for us, we approach it the exact same way. It's about story, character, our collaborators, and getting in the room with people and having a good time creating something, you know, and seeing it through. I don't think it matters really where it is.
Wow.
No.
Well, in talking about your process, you sort of share credits, right? So how do you guys work as a team? Do you divide the lyrics and the music in the book, or do you all pile on to everything? How does that work?
We are just constantly bouncing things back and forth, whether it be when we're talking conceptually about an idea that we might be pitching, or if we're working on lyrics for a song, the two of us will kind of sit opposite each other and literally just be throwing out ideas for lyrics, a concept for how the lyrics work. Oh, I had a verse idea, had a chorus idea. What do you think of this? What do you think of that? And so we're kind of both kind of throwing ideas, bouncing ideas off of each other, and creating that. And then usually we will work on some lyrics and then jump to some music and try out music. Both of us taking turns at the piano.
Yeah,
one of us will be singing, wandering around. The other one will be playing the piano.
We both play piano. We both write lyrics. So we literally just going back and forth and just whatever, you know. And sometimes come up with ideas separately that we'll send to each other. It can be any which way. And usually with our book writers, for musicals, we love working with a book writer because it's just you only wear so many hats, and it's fun working with people. Yeah. And we'll sit there for a long time and talk about the story and talk about every single musical moment before we even go write a song. I mean, we don't like to write any songs until we really have a solid outline of the show and a solid description of what every single song is, and even musical style. Like, what is the musical voice of a certain character? So we're not kind of just writing music that we fall in love with, but it doesn't feel appropriate to that particular character at that moment in the show. So I think we do a lot of talking about the musical, you know, stylings of the show, the dramatic intent of every song.
The characters in terms of like how much stuff is going to be an overall sound for the show versus individual characters and what kinds of sound might be evocative of their voice.
Before we ever write anything, really.
We especially love, actually, when it comes to working musicals, we love getting as much material from book writers as possible to get a sense of their voice, because, you know, ideally, I think when it's done right, the whole musical should feel like it's written by like one person with one voice. So we want the lyrics and music to feel like they do kind of fold into each other as though there was just one person creating it.
Right, and so that involves you as a composer and lyricist being very much involved with the book writer and not just simply waiting to be handed material, but it sounds like you really participate in those conversations about what the tone of the piece is and how the character development and all of that. So it's a real group effort before you actually start writing songs. Yeah,
I think it has to be, because like Alan said before, the best shows and the shows that succeed are shows that feel like they were created by one person. And there should be no distinction between the dialogue and the lyrics in terms of the sound of the character. If it sounds like one person wrote the dialogue and another person wrote the lyrics, that's not great. So we do a lot of, and I think some people are like, well, why are you guys sitting around talking so much? Aren't you working? It's like, yeah, you're working. You're talking a lot with the book writer, getting a sense of what their voice is, trying to match each other and figure out who we are as a team.
It's so much of the heavy lifting of that processing of what it's going to be like and creating a rhythm. And then we do like going back and forth on like an outline or something, because a book writer might send us an outline with ideas for where they think songs would go. We might then fill in ideas for how that works, send it back, and then to create a good flow in a document before we kind of all dive in. And then of course you're going to make discoveries, because what you thought was your opening number, it's terrible, and then 3 or 4 opening numbers later, hopefully you've landed it.
Yeah, opening numbers tend to be the toughest, right? Because you can't really know how to open the show until you know where it's going and how it's going to end. You got to sort of reverse engineer in a way. So that probably the opening numbers.
Very often we start with the second number.
I actually think even more so, something we talked about is that always just the best thing is get your bad version of the show done.
Yeah.
Write through the whole show. Like
Great.
just get it done, write some version of the show, and then like in all likelihood you're going to throw out half of those songs, if not more, and the scenes and move it all around, but at least you'll have something done. And in that creating of whatever that thing is, as terrible as it might be, or as amazing as it might be, you make so many discoveries, but you never make those discoveries if you spend 3 years working on Act 1 and you never finish it.
I love that. I love that.
We try to actually write fast, get through something and not self-edit while we do it.
That's such a great attitude, because it helps you not be precious about your work and feel like every word you write has to be perfect or is perfect and can't be changed. It allows you to say, look, let's just get something out there and see what's working and then go from there. I think that's a great attitude. So guys,
it's one of the most dangerous things you can do.
Yeah. What are you working on next? I'd love to hear. You guys are so prolific and clearly so self-motivated. You must have a long list of things on your plate that you're headed for. Can you talk to us about any of them?
Yeah, I mean, right now, right after this interview, we're headed back to rehearsal we're in the middle of a 3-week lab for a new musical that we're writing called Intermission, that we're writing the score for. And the book is by Zachary, who wrote and directed Airplane and Naked Gun.
And it's being co-directed and choreographed by Chris Catelli, who won the Tony for Newsies.
And it's a crazy, wacky show in the vein of like an Airplane or Naked Gun.
But it's an original story.
Yeah, Jerry had always been approached about adapting Airplane, and he never wanted to. And he's like, well, I'll just create my own story, and and he did that. And so we're in the middle of this very, very cool, very fun lab where we're discovering a lot about the show. And
there was an example of something, actually, when we started writing it too, we were like, matching his tone was going to be so specific. We didn't even know, like, will we be able to? So we said, you know what, let's just write Act 1, do a basic reading of Act 1, and see where we are and see how it's going. And if it's going well, then we continue on. If not, we need to go back and re-examine it. Or is it even the right thing? And the response to the first reading was really, really encouraging. So we're like, okay, well, obviously we have to continue on.
That show is being produced, again, we're going back up to the 5th Avenue in Seattle. So they wanted to do it, which is great. So we'll have its first production there next year. And then we have a musical of the movie 17 again for Warner Brothers that Adam Shankman is directing, the movie director and producer. He's directing that. And that's now moving forward, and that has a book by Marco Panett, who's a great TV writer. And then we have on the TV side 2 TV musical projects, one that we're working on with Harvey Weinstein's company, and another with Craig Zane and Neil Marin, who produce all the TV musicals and all that. We're doing one with them.
And a lot of those things actually come out of like we kind of talk about ideas and we'll think, hey, this is a really fun idea, usually something with some sort of musical component to it. And we'll think, is it a stage musical? Is it a TV project? Could it be a movie? Could it be an animated movie? And just sort of look across all of them and see what feels like the best place to develop this idea for. And that's where a lot of these ideas kind of come from.
And then you go and pitch it.
And then we have some other things.
Yeah. Then you go and pitch it to whomever you think might be interested. Yeah. Okay. Guys.
Exactly. Yeah. Like these ideas that we had developed, that were TV ideas. They were specifically musical, and so we thought of Craig Zane and Neil Marin because they're such great musical producers on television and theater, film, and to our great delight, they liked the idea and wanted to do it. So now we're developing with them, which is great. And the Weinstein one was something that actually Harvey Weinstein acquired a show, a Swedish TV show, and they were looking for writers and had read a script we had written, liked our tone and liked our voice, and we came up with it. They asked us to come up with a take on this Swedish show for American. We came up with it, and they liked it and brought us onto it.
And what's fun about TV projects, obviously if you're sort of jumping between worlds, one of the things that's fun about TV projects is we're pitching it now. In 2 months, it could be something that has completely disappeared and doesn't happen, or maybe you end up selling it, you're writing it, you don't know, but either way, you get to move on to the next step of something quickly. The Once Upon a Time musical episode being an interesting example of that, of like, we pitched the idea that last summer, we got the green light in January, and it was on the air at the beginning of May. So actually, from the time we started writing to airing was 4 months.
Wow.
It's 2 weeks to write 8 songs, so it's a little different in theater.
Yeah.
And contrast that with the trajectory of Secondhand Lions, as you were saying before, how long it takes to get a show to Broadway, even when you have
a much lengthier process.
Yeah, much, and
Yeah,
that's even when you have backing from a studio and a commercial producer and everything else on board. It still takes a long time.
Totally, and I think one of the things is it's great working with a studio on a project because obviously studios have money, which is an amazing thing. But at the same time, a movie studio is a movie studio, and they have a million things they're dealing with. And it's not necessarily their first priority to do theater, or you have to deal with other issues that come up within a studio, or executives change.
A much larger corporate structure in general of the way approvals happen can be very complicated.
It's not just it's great, we have a studio, we're going to be on Broadway tomorrow.
Yeah. So guys, I have a couple of final questions to ask you. First of all, there's a fantasy question we've been asking everyone we've been interviewing, which is, if you were to wake up tomorrow morning and suddenly find you'd been gifted with $100 million that had to be earmarked towards the development of new musicals, how would you guys want to spend that money?
Wow, that's a very good question.
And well, we first have to take a nice vacation to talk about that. I think we have to think about that.
No, I mean, what would be great for the development of musicals would be, well, there's, I think, 2 things. One, an environment and a space and a place that would be conducive to developing new musicals. Whether it's a place that has a couple theaters that would be dedicated to doing workshops and labs and all those things for you to present, so you always have a place you can go.
Because there's not enough of an opportunity certainly out there for new writers or any writers to have a work and get to see it up on stage. Because you can sit in a room and do readings till the cows come home, and you can even refine it and think, oh my God, this is great. But once you get in a theater and you're adding, there's 50% of your show that you haven't seen, and very often that does require taking it and rebuilding the show in a way dramatically, because it can feel very different once it's up on stage.
Right, true.
And I think I think what else you do is, I mean,
I think, obviously anything that could actually help subsidize writers in musical theaters to be able to focus on just writing, on where you could actually spend 6 months working on a show, writing it, doing it, as opposed to having to spend so much time, working other jobs.
Sponsoring readings, labs, workshops, so you can showcase your work, I think would be nice for people, because we certainly, as we said before, we've paid for a lot of our own. First day, it was a workshop, a reading, actually, a 20-hour reading that we paid for ourselves. And we've done that many times. And we don't, which I think is important also for writers and people to hear, is like, don't sit around and wait for producers to go pay for something for you, because it doesn't happen a lot.
To us, it's just part of the budget of doing it. It's like, it's your graduate school, we look at it as our restaurant. You're investing in your restaurant and you hope that it goes well. You don't know, but if you don't make the investment, you're not going to have food there to serve. Like that goes.
That's, I mean, so helping, I would do that with money like that. I would help fund those kinds of things for writers.
Wait, did we win the $100 million?
Yeah, well, that was.
This is just hypothetical.
We'll let you know about that. We'll get back to you, but that's a great analogy about thinking of it as graduate school or business investment. That's a great way to look at it. That's fantastic. To wrap up, I wanted to ask just a 2-part question, which is, first of all, what do you think the future of musical theater is? Where is it headed? How is it changing? And based on that, what kind of advice would you give to writers who are trying to write the musicals of tomorrow? Or what kind of advice, do you maybe wish you had when you started?
One, I would say this is a two-parter. So the first part of the advice might be something that the LA writers or the people in LA don't want to hear, but again, we're from LA, born in LA, raised in LA.
Love LA.
I would love to be there right now.
Yes.
We were told early on, if you're writing musicals, you should be in New York, because that's where the industry of musical theater is. So if you're going to go and try to be in a business and an industry, that's what the people are. Personally, in a way, I wish we had come to New York, went right out of college and written some musicals and just put them up here, because I think we'd be ahead of the game in certain ways for that business. That being said, having been in LA brought a lot of really other cool opportunities that we would not have had, I think, if we had just been here.
Although we were actively pursuing things that were opportunities that were specific also to Hollywood at the same time.
Yeah.
We were doing some theater stuff, including even producing a show in LA. But knowing that like just writing theater, it's really tough. It's definitely tough.
I think it's tough, and so I think it's easier for doing it
in New York, or certainly making sure to have a presence in New York where you're coming out frequently, meeting the players, having them know you. And now there are actually even more venues to be able to do concerts and get your work out there and getting it seen.
Now that said, I think that another part of your question is where's musical theater headed and all of that. New York's a limited market. There's 40 buildings or so on Broadway that's it. So it's not like you have a million places to go with your work. So I think looking for other venues and avenues to be musical writers is probably the future, whether it's online or in other places.
Immersive type spaces, I think there's certainly a big emerging market, and the notion that theater doesn't have to be something just in the big proscenium theater, so that it can actually occur in so many different forms, so many venues.
Thinking about it that way, because New York is limited in its own way by the real estate here. So I think that looking for other ways to get your work out there is really important. And I think also what producers hear in a conversation that's happening a lot that we've heard is because right now the licensing market, which is what we all know is the future life of the show and can be very lucrative for writers and for the show, if your show is licensed for years and years to come, the licensing market is truly based on the show being a Broadway show. It's very hard to license shows or to get traction licensing shows that have not been on Broadway. So I think there's a conversation happening about how can you market and license and create shows that are not Broadway shows that can get out into the marketplace. So that's an interesting thing. I think really things like doing online musicals, or even what they're trying to do with the like Broadway HC, and maybe they'll shoot an original show at some point that's not a Broadway show, create something original and put it out, like 1,000 events. That'd be interesting. Now, any way to get shows out there that doesn't require being within 10 blocks in a certain area of Midtown Manhattan, I think is going to be the future, because a show that's successful is a limited amount of space.
Yeah.
That's a great idea, because we have so many ways of getting entertainment for ourselves these days. It makes sense that those of us who are trying to create that entertainment need to look at all of those pathways and be a part of them. So that's smart
100%.
advice. Guys, thank you so much for chatting with us. I always love listening to you two and your stories and your energy, and keep writing those musicals, and we'll be there to see them. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Our pleasure.
Thanks so much for meeting with us today.